It isn't, your purpose isn't to try to be loving. Your purpose is to be love, and only have that to give away. Well, but there's one other ingredient, and it's really crucial. Forgiveness is the vital ingredient on the path of enlightenment. And if you don't know how to do it, then practice sending out love. Take the person or the people that you're having conflict with, any place in your life, send them something. You don't have to even do it physically. Just send them something that comes from inside. And what's inside is how you choose to think. And if you can make that love and do that, and that is to me the test. Not whether you can love someone when they smell good, when they do everything that you're supposed to, but whether you can love someone who has sent you hate or anguish in your life and send it back. You don't have to forget. You don't have to go back. But you got to get it out of you because it is blocking you and holding you back.
Living the Tao Te Ching, this 2,600-year-old, some people call it the greatest, the wisest book ever written. It speaks so much about relationships. Tao, the word Tao, means the great way. It's really just another synonym for God, or source, or spirit, or that which is the all-creating. And one of the things that it says that was really helpful to me, probably the most helpful thing in it, was that whenever you have a conflict of any kind in any relationship, whenever you have a conflict, that the person who is willing to be of Tao, of God, of Source, is the one who will practice forgiveness, or will go to the person that they have a conflict with and bring love to it, instead of the freeze out, instead of the anger, instead of the hatred, instead of the revenge, instead of so many of the things that we do when we have conflicts in our lives. We just don't talk to that person. Like, I'm not talking to that. I'm not talking to him. He's going to call me because I called the last time. And but the person who lives the Tao life, the life of a higher consciousness, is the person who says, "I end all conflicts on love," which is where we all come from. We come from a source that is love. So for me, that has been just so useful. I have 8 children, and that's been just extraordinarily helpful for me to be in a relationship where I can always be of love, where I can just, and so then you don't even, conflicts become something that are no longer present, because conflict requires two-ness. In order to have a conflict, you have to have two different opinions or whatever. But if you live in oneness, if you really see yourself in everyone else, see yourself in all the things, including the plants, including the animals, and including all beings and so on. If you just suspend this ego part of you and just see yourself in that other person, then your arguments are really with yourself. And your hatreds are really about yourself. And you begin to really see that I don't have to project anything onto anyone else that isn't what I choose to be.
And the idea of allowing is that you start to see that, you start to look at the world not the way you want it to be. This is the shift in our subconscious mind training that we have to go through. We have to get out of this mindset that the world ought to be the way I want it to be, and things ought to be going the way I think that they should be going, and that there should be nothing bad happens, and all of this kinds of stuff that we fill our inner world with, and talk about how terrible this is and that is and so on, when in fact the world is just the way it is. And when you can align yourself with that awareness that yes, you can do things to improve it and so on, but not by judging it, and not by saying that it shouldn't be this way. I've given the example many times of my friend Ram Dass, who, when we were talking about starvation, and it was when I was working for the Hunger Project to try to end hunger by the beginning of this century. This was back in the 1980s. And Ram Dass said to me many years ago that starvation, in different parts of the world, is part of the perfection of the universe. You've got to understand that. As hard as that is to grasp, And I paused and thought about that, and my original reaction is, how can you say such a thing? How can we accept the idea that some people have got to starve to death in a world where there's plenty of food and the technology to be able to grow it and so on is all here? How can you say that? But then he concluded his remark to me. He said, so starvation is a part of the perfection of the world, but so is your desire to end it. That's part of the perfection of the world. And so it's like and so where you put your attention is not on what you don't want, because if you put your attention, if what you think about is what expands, and if you put your attention on the things that you don't like and that you don't want, then you just multiply the amount of negativity and the amount of what you don't want. You become a part of the very thing that you are trying to eradicate.
Where there is doubt, faith. How can I bring faith to the presence of doubt? Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet, once said that faith is the sound that the songbird makes before the dawn. Before the dawn. The songbird has got incredible faith. He knows the dawn is coming. And the ability of each and every one of us to just go within and find something inside of us. Someone said to me today that that's fine what you're talking about, but he said, I'm an atheist. And I said to him, I said, try not to think of it in terms of whether or not you belong to a perfect system, or whether God exists or doesn't exist the way you have been raised to believe. Try thinking of it as a presence. When you go to sleep tonight, look at your fingernails. And know that in the morning they're going to be just a little bit longer than they were when you went to sleep. That there's a force in the universe that is everywhere. And this force doesn't grow your fingernails and stop yours from growing. This force doesn't allow your hair to grow. Well, that's not a good example. This force doesn't beat your heart and not mine. There's one force, one power in all of the universe, and it grows our fingernails, and it beats our heart, and it aligns the planets, and it opens every flower every morning, and it is this universal one song, universe, one song, that connects everything in the universe. It is a way of looking at the world from a spiritual perspective. Where there is despair, said Francesco, let me send hope. Michelangelo once responded, he said, the greater danger is not that our hopes are too high and we fail to reach them. It's that they are too low and we do. I do talk radio across the country all the time. And people will call in with a disease that has been diagnosed as terminal. And I will always tell that person that whatever energy that allowed any miracle to ever take place, that law is still on the books. It hasn't been repealed. Go to that place. Go to that place within you, that quiet place where you have an awareness that you can commune and reconnect to your source. And go there and be at peace. Find that inner joy, that inner island, that inner Tahiti that Melville described, that allows you to know that I am not going to have despair. I'm going to have hope. Where there is darkness, light. And I've spoken already about this whole metaphor of darkness and light. One of the most beautiful quotes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, Ralph, who sat right there, he said, there is no object so foul that intense light will not make it beautiful. And so often our thoughts are of darkness. So often at night, sometimes people they'll lie in their bed and they won't have any light in the room, and their minds will go into all of the fears and all of their worries and all of the stress. And I tell people, turn the light on. Bring light. Literally bring light to that presence. Because in the daytime, when the sun is out, when you're out in the light, things just don't seem the same as they do in the darkness, do they? And it's that light, that bringing light to the presence of darkness. Light is a higher and a faster energy. Bring that energy to the presence of that lower and slower energy called darkness, and it is nullified. It can't survive, nor can hate, nor can anger. Perfect love, it says in the scriptures, perfect love casteth out all fear. Fear cannot exist in the presence of love, and sadness cannot exist in the presence of joy.
Just as you become what you think about all day long, so too do your relationships become what you think about. Your life and all of the relationships within it are all purposeful. Generally speaking, the quality of our lives is pretty much related to the quality of our relationship to the people in our lives. And, to add a piece to the equation, our relationships reflect how we relate to ourselves. That's right, to ourselves. When you cultivate the awareness of your body, mind, and soul as one, and experience unity within yourself, you are then ready to share this sense of wholeness and holiness with others, and this is where your relationships come in. When you have love for yourself, that is what you have to give away. What is inside you gets there by way of your thoughts. If you harbor hate, hate is what you give away. If you harbor self-contempt, contempt is what you give away. If you harbor love and compassion is what you give away. Your relationships travel the same course you do. If you learn through suffering and questioning why things were not working out, as I discussed earlier, then your relationships also suffered. If you followed the path of outcomes and began to see that there were lessons to learn in life, then your relationships also reflected this pattern. And if you've gone to purpose and have your life on purpose, your relationships will also reflect this position in your life. Remember, purpose is about giving. Let's take a look at the core ingredient of a relationship that is on purpose, and then examine some specific methods for getting there. At the center of a purposeful relationship is love, but it is more than simply being able to say the words, "I love you," for the words are used by people who also berate and harm each other on a daily basis. Love is giving, and it has nothing to do with what you receive. This ingredient of love at the level of giving is how purpose is defined, and it is the ultimate in creating miraculous relationships. If you have love inside of you, that is all that you will have available to give away. You begin to see the fullness of God in everyone you encounter, and the level of your relationships to others takes on the glow of real magic. You see your children and all children not in terms of what they are doing or how they're behaving or misbehaving, but beyond to the invisible part of them, the soul that is in that young body. You meet that soul with love and radiate it outward to them, and they will in turn respond with love. You have loving relationships with others because you bring love, rather than because you seek it from others. Members of your family with whom you have had a difficult time relating are no longer the source of your disdain. Your anger and negativity is gone, replaced by non-judgmental love. This does not require long years of therapy or the assistance of support groups or drugs or special herbs. It requires only that you shift to being a spiritual being first and a physical being second. Your friendships and business relationships can also improve dramatically with this new giving approach. When a conflict arises, you suspend your negative thoughts and instead send out love. When you respond in an unthreatened manner and instead communicate an inner knowing in a peaceful, loving way, you are incapable of being rattled by challenges. You have created a miracle in that relationship. I can remember as a college professor having some gigantic disagreements with my colleagues. They were what we call difficult people to get along with unless you shared their point of view, which very few people did. I discovered I was always able to get my way with these impossible colleagues. I was experiencing real magic where others were experiencing exasperation. The secret? Send them love and ask nothing of them. The colleagues always came around and found it impossible to be nasty or confrontational with me. I simply sent them the love I had inside and then surrendered. This approach to relationships is basically my approach to life. Stay on purpose. Know that you're here to serve. Get off of having to prove yourself. Remove your ego from the encounter and send out love. Giving love with no expectations is the cornerstone of your relationship when you are on purpose. There really is very little else that you need to know. Practice this giving of love without conditions, and you'll find yourself feeling full rather than empty, and blissful rather than miserable. Here are 4 ancillary qualities that go into this real magic in your relationships. 1. Relinquish your need to be right This is the single greatest cause of difficulties and deterioration in relationships, the need to make the other person wrong or to make yourself right. The spiritual partnership is a relationship of equals. No one needs to be proven wrong. Each person has the right to their own point of view. A simple reminder goes like this: I know how I feel about this, and it doesn't match how she feels. But so what? It is enough that I know it in my mind. I have no need to make her feel wrong. Then stifle yourself, and you have created a miracle right there. You have replaced a potential conflict with a loving response. Practice this, and you will see love replacing anger between you. This is also true in your relationships to all others. Your children need to be guided, not to be made wrong. The embarrassment that goes with being proven stupid leads to a self-image of stupidity. You can replace those statements designed to prove how superior you are with loving responses designed to help your children and others examine their own point of view. This can be applied in business, with strangers that you meet, in disputes with your neighbors, in virtually all human relationships. 2. Allow space. Let there be space in your togetherness. When you love someone for what they are, rather than what you think they should be, or for how they please you, then allowing for privacy and space comes automatically. The clinging relationships racked with jealousy and fear come from individuals who believe they have a right to dictate what the other person ought to be. Rather than regarding the need of your partner to have alone time as a threat, see it as a time for renewal that you celebrate. Make every effort to help each other have that space. The irony is, the more space you allow and encourage within the relationship, the more the relationship will flourish. 3. Eliminate the idea of ownership. Seek to enjoy each other, not to possess each other. No one wants to feel owned. No one wants to feel like a possession. No one wants to be dominated or controlled. We all show up here with a purpose, and that purpose gets thwarted when any human being attempts to interfere with our heroic mission. Ownership is the greatest inhibitor to feeling a sense of purpose and mission in one's life. You don't have the right to tell the people with whom you are in a relationship what they ought to be doing while they're here on earth. That is only between each person and their soul. You may succeed in imprisoning another, and you may have a marriage that lasts for 60 years, but you do not have a loving relationship if either partner feels owned or like a possession. This is the lesson I had to learn the hard way. It cost me dearly. A painful divorce and many unpleasant hours in hostile conflict. Today, I can't even conceive of the idea that I could own my wife. She is her own person, and my own relationship to her is based upon acknowledging that in her. It is indeed reciprocal. It came about through giving, not demanding, through respect, not criticism. Number 4, you do not have to understand. What a great lesson this is in learning how to make all relationships work at a magical level. You simply do not have to understand why someone else would want to do and think the way they do. The fact that you are willing to say, I do not understand, and that is fine, is the greatest understanding you could exhibit. You are together not to understand each other, but to aid each other in living a life at purpose. These are the qualities that make for a purposeful relationship. They all orbit around the planet of unconditional love. Get to this place, and you will begin to see results in all of your relationships.
More conscious of your divinity, just conscious of your divinity, that you have the power to negotiate the presence of this energy to do incredible things for yourself. But there are 3 things you have to do. The first is you have to have what I call recognition of this force. And recognition of this force is nothing more than simply saying to yourself, I am open to the idea that there is a force that is greater than I am, to which I am always connected, that is everywhere at once, and no place that it is not. And I would like to just say that it is available to me. You don't have to have proof of it. You don't have to have anybody confirm it. It is just simply an awareness that it exists. See, once you recognize that this force that opens the flowers, that keeps the planet in alignment, that grows your fingernails every night and beats your heart, independent of your opinion about it. You go to sleep at night, you look at your fingernails the next morning, they're longer than they were the night before, and you're sound asleep. Not only that, but whatever force it was that grew yours, grew the person next to yours and grew the people across the oceans as well. There's a force that's growing everybody's fingernails, whether they like it or not. and growing their hair, well, most of them, and beating their hearts and circulating their food and opening the flowers and turning, acorns into oak trees and turning embryos into human beings. There's a force. There's something. I can't see it. I don't know what it is. I recognize it. If you recognize it and that there's no place that it's not, the beauty of that is that it's also then in everything that you would like to attract into your life. And here you've just taken one step towards diminishing the role of the ego in your life. If you can recognize that there is a power in the universe that is that is part of you, if there's no place that it is not, then it has to be in you. And if it is in you, and there's no place that it's not, it also has to be in whatever you'd like to attract into your life. So all you have to say is, I'm already connected to that which I would like to attract into my life. That what you want wants you. All you have to do is somehow figure out a way to realign your inner intention and recognize, I am not separate from it, I am connected to it, it just hasn't shown up in my space yet. But I'm already connected to it. That's a very powerful insight. That's why people at higher levels of consciousness can manifest, because there's no delay between what they put in their attention on and having it show up. It's why the gift of fish and loaves is the ability to see hungry people and to think food, and it shows up. And even the least among you can do all that I have done. It's all within you to be able to do that. So that shifting takes place first and foremost with the recognition that there is a force, there is a power. That's how you treasure your divinity. The second thing that you do is what I call realization. And realization is the time in your life when you stop telling yourself that I believe this or don't believe this on the basis of what somebody else says or does. It comes from my own personal direct experience. It's the only thing I will rely upon. I will not rely upon the written word. I will not rely upon the spoken word. I will not rely upon someone else out there telling me that this is what God is or how it works. I will rely upon the realization of it through my own direct conscious experience. And I will not try to persuade anybody else. I will not listen to or argue with anybody about whether it's real or not real, whether it works or doesn't work. I know it. Be still and know. And you have that knowing, and the realization is there, and you trust in that realization. I trust in my own experience. I've had it. I have talked to this force. I have seen it work. I've put my attention on it. I've been able to manifest what I want in my life. I've been able to heal myself. I've been able to help heal others. I've been able to feel comfort in times when others feel sadness. These are all things that I know come to me through my direct experience of God. And it doesn't matter what anybody else out there says or does. Realization. I now realize it and trust in that. That's the second step. And the third I call reverence. And reverence is where you begin to have a daily commune with this power, with this force. That you are not only aware of it, but you are communing quietly with it. You're communing quietly with it. The way to get to this place of inner peace and consequently to experience higher awareness is to shut down the internal frenzy. The Chinese sage Sengchan Tsen gave us the following piece of wisdom. Stop talking, stop thinking, and there is nothing you will not understand. Return to the root and you will find meaning. Look inward, and in a flash you will conquer the apparent and the void. He is counseling us to simply stop talking and stop thinking. This is the third key to the sense of peacefulness that is a part of the way of the sacred quest. I want to make it clear that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the experience of the presence of God. As you learn to shut down your inner dialogue and become more peaceful, you will begin to know the presence of God in your life. That presence will be felt in both your body and your inner world. Beliefs are removed. Belief is replaced with knowing.
At different times in my past, both alcohol and other substances were a part of my own life path. Through meditation, I was able to leave alcohol behind, and I have never touched it since. But with other substances, I believed I could use them when I chose to for an energizing effect beyond anything I had ever experienced. I was able to use them, enjoy increased energy, and leave them alone for long periods of time. But a time came when I knew I was making foolish and non-spiritual choices connected with seeking out these insidious substances. My personal challenge became to rid myself of these insidious habits. I tried reading my way out of it, but I went back. I tried acupuncture, discussions with experts, and herbal cures, but I went back. I was determined that I would no longer play around with any substance, but I went back. Then I had what I call a holy instant, which was for me a divine experience. At 4:05 a.m. on a January morning, I was meditating. In the still quiet of that meditation, the thought of never again using a substance became real. It was my first absolutely direct experience of God. My entire inner screen of awareness became a bright luminescence as I heard a voice say, "You've tried everything else. Why not try me?" I have never in my life known such peace and certainty that God was with me and around me. I felt overwhelmed by the bliss I experienced. I listened to that voice, felt the presence of God, and have not since experienced the slightest desire to go back to any substance. I have debated with myself about putting this very personal story on this tape. That is, my ego self debated with my higher self. But I knew my experience with chemical substances involved helping others to look within, instead of outside of themselves, for both the excitement and the peace their higher self has for them. If, in my telling this story, one person who experiments with any substance and knows that it is out of control decides to shut down the inner turmoil and seek the help of their loving presence, then it will have been worth it. You needn't have the challenge of getting off drugs to find value applying this third key to higher awareness. It works the same way for every experience you are ready to transcend. Getting to silence and then having God be your personal knowing presence. Getting to silence requires conscious effort on your part. When going within, use the metaphor of the pebble dropping through the various levels of your mind. While the pebble drops, be the witness. Observe compassionately all your chatter and thoughts as you descend to the unified field. When you notice your mind overly crowded with thoughts, practice not focusing on anything just for a few moments. Tell yourself, "My mind is full of the disturbance of chatter and thoughts. I'm going to try to spend 5 minutes without any thoughts bombarding me. I'll dismiss every thought just for a few moments." Use your breath as a means to keep your mind from chattering away ceaselessly. You can do this by focusing your compassionate witness on your breathing. Breathe in deeply, excluding any thoughts as you concentrate on the in-breath. Then exhale slowly and fully with the same concentration. When thoughts appear, as they will, know that they are signaling you to return to mindfulness of your breathing in and out. Your heartbeat can also be used as a focal point for the witness. Return to the steady, rhythmic beat of your heart when you notice thoughts intruding. When you find your thoughts just below the surface in the analyzing level, think of a rose. As you replace the analyzing with the beauty of a rose, you might want to recall this verse by the poet Rabindranath Tagore. "Do not carry a rose to our beloved, because in it is already embodied a message which, unlike our language of words, cannot be analyzed." That is, remember that the habit of analyzing or picking things apart in a judging fashion keeps you from knowing the truth that is at the center of your being. The rose needs no analyzing, as the poet reminds us. It simply is. The same is true of you. At the synthesizing level, when you are feeling the beauty and unity of life, you may discover that you are entering thoughts of pleasure about enjoying this spiritual space. Let go of those thoughts too. The ego enjoys convincing you that you are better than others because you are more spiritual or have deeper understanding. It swims through your consciousness with thoughts like those. When it does, gently send it elsewhere for this time of meditation or prayer. To understand that you have a higher self and to know it and be aware of it is one thing, but to trust in it is quite something else. And the ways to put this principle into practice are, first of all, to keep in mind that you cannot go to a higher ground if you're hanging on to a lower level. That in order to get yourself to a higher place, a place of trust, you have to somehow recognize that all of the stuff that's going on in your life in a lower place is something you have to let go of. You have to trust that when you do let go, you're not going to be falling into the abyss. And I would recommend that you take a real rebellious attitude toward the philosophy which preaches that that you are not connected to the divine energy, that somehow this force that has many names is something that is outside of you, and you're not deserving of it. Until you know that you can trust in it, you can't use it and acknowledge it in your life. One of the things to do to practice this trust is to take the most serious problem that you have and turn it over to God. Affirm to yourself, I would like to show my trust in the divine force by simply turning my problems over to your divine hands. I can remember doing this with some of the things that I really struggled with at one time in my life, things that I just thought I couldn't get past. I remember going through relationship difficulties. I remember going through problems with drinking and things like this, where it just seemed like I wanted to get past it, and I just didn't know quite what to do. I can remember times when I would be stuck in my writing and not sure whether I could, and I would just stop and I would just say, all right, I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust. I'm going to surrender. And this concept of surrender is very, very important. So when you do this, it's just that simple act of getting down on your knees and staying there on your knees and just say, okay, I'm going to turn this over to something that is higher within myself. And the ego seems to go away, and the solution seems to be there for you. The presence of complete trust is evident in your life when you start to think and feel and do are all balanced and they're all in harmony. This is called congruence. If you're congruent, your thoughts and your feelings and your behavior are all in harmony. If you're incongruent, you have one thought about, gee, I'd like to be able to do this, but then you feel another way about it, and then you act in a completely different way. And this is the cause of most of the struggles in our life, and it's also the thing that impedes the free flow of the divine force into your life. You have to trust in yourself. When you're trusting in yourself, you're trusting in this very wisdom that is the source of your life. And when you are congruent within and are feeling congruent, you are also beginning to act congruent. So work on congruency and look at the areas in your life in which you feel yourself to be incongruent. What do I think about this, and how do I feel, and how do I act? And try to bring them into harmony. And you'll start accessing this trust that is absolutely essential to the manifesting process. And of course, as always, you have to begin a meditation practice of contemplating the supreme principle which is beyond the pettiness of this world. And as you meditate and go within and you make conscious contact with God, God isn't something that you know about any longer. God is something that you know directly and personally. And once you have this direct conscious contact, this knowing, then trust is not anything that you'll ever have to work on again. You'll have the knowing, you'll have banished the doubt. In your silent moments of prayer, I would recommend that you're not afraid to ask for help, because what you're asking for is a more direct communication and dialogue with God, which is, of course, a part of what you are already in the first place. So that God is not this giant vending machine in the sky who's dispensing goodies to you, but God is a part of you that you are in dialogue with, and you ask for that, and you'll find yourself achieving it. I'd also recommend that you practice a 2 or 3 day regimen of just having unconditionally loving thoughts and nothing else towards one particular person in your life, whoever that might be, maybe one of your children or your in-laws or one of your spouse, or maybe someone you're struggling with or having a difficult time in communicating. And just practice, say, for this day and this day only, I am going to practice everything, no matter what they say or how they say it. I'm just going to respond internally with unconditional love. I'm not going to allow any negativity there. And watch how that relationship changes. Remind yourself that love transforms, that unconditional love is healing, that it heals the body and it heals the mind. And if you have this kind of approach to your life and don't put conditions on it, then you'll find yourself feeling much more peaceful, and you'll sleep better, and you'll enjoy your friends and neighbors more, and your prosperity will increase, because unconditional love is the same as having peace within yourself. Remember, the opposite of love is really fear. Every time you experience fear, ask yourself, what's going on that I've substituted fear here for love in this moment? And the fear that we have that we're not complete, or that we're alone, which is the number one fear that all human beings seem to suffer from, is that the fear of being alone. Once you've transcended that fear of being alone, you begin to recognize you're never alone. You always have divine guidance. You're always connected to this divine principle that is universal. That means it's everywhere, which means it's no place that it's not, which means, of course, that it's within you. So you substitute that fear when you accept unconditional love into your life. It goes away.
I want to read you just a few things from the Hua Hu Ching, and this is all about meaning. Dissolving the mind is a matter of not doing. Simply avoid becoming attached to what you see and think. Now, this is one of the most important lines in the Hua Hu Ching. Relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all-knowing mind of the universe. Relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all-knowing mind of the universe, which is what I spoke about with the ego. You've got to relinquish that idea. The all-knowing mind of the universe, God, is not only something that you are connected to, it is something that you are. Carry that inner vision around. The idea that you could somehow be separated from God is a complete and total illusion. Then you can recover your original pure insight and see through all illusions. Remember, because clarity and enlightenment are within your own nature, they are regained without moving an inch. This is really powerful. I always go back to remind myself of that. Because clarity and enlightenment are within your own nature, they are regained without moving an inch. Now here's the big kicker from the Hua Hu Ching. If you correct your mind, the rest of your life will fall into place. That is, all of your addictions, all of your overweightedness, all of your poisons, all of your pain, if you correct your mind, everything else will fall into place. The 23 pounds that I took off in 29 days, I attribute to not eating sugar, and I wanted to talk about that here when we talked about returning to your original nature. I think it's because I corrected my mind. See, if you correct your mind, that's when you know when you're over an addiction. One of my favorite people that I've come to know is President Reagan's daughter, Patty Davis. You knew it wasn't the others, didn't you? Those of you know about it. I mean, she's the scurvy elephant. And she was a cocaine addict, severe. And she wrote an essay in Newsweek magazine about how she quit cocaine. And she said she tried everything. She tried not disappointing herself. She tried not disappointing her father, who was the President of the United States. She tried not disappointing her mother, but her mother was always disappointed in her, she said. And then she said, I finally got to a place in my life, and that was the conclusion of it. And I took this out and I sent it to my daughter, who has struggled with drugs, and she read it to everybody in the unit that she was staying in at the time. She said, I finally decided that I no longer wanted to disappoint God. Now remember, I'm not talking about God in a religious context here, in the sense of this is a specific religion that has been handed to you. She might just as well have said, I no longer wanted to disappoint the highest place that I am, my highest self. I didn't want to stay misaligned any longer. And by realigning herself with her God nature and realizing that you can never be separate from God, from your source, from your divinity, and relinquishing that idea of your separation from it, by doing that, you correct your mind. And as you correct your mind, that's like when we were talking about the sugar thing, if you correct your mind about that, this is going to be really easy. And as you do that, it's not like I'm tempted, but I'm not going to. It's like the temptation is gone because you're home. You're back home. You're in the place of well-being. Make me an instrument, if you want to pray, of thy well-being. And of thy well-being. That from which I originated. Okay. So, more important than that, if you correct your mind, the rest of your life
will fall into place. This is true because the mind is the governing aspect of a human life. If the river flows clearly and cleanly through the proper channel, all will be well along its banks. The integral way, the way of meaning, depends on decreasing, not increasing. To correct your mind, rely on not doing. Stop thinking and clinging to complications. Keep your mind detached and whole. Eliminate mental muddiness and obscurity. Keep your mind crystal clear. Avoid daydreaming and allow your pure, original insight to emerge. Quiet your emotions and abide in serenity.
Listen to these words, recorded during a 1967 lecture given by an initiatic science master, Omram Mikhail Ivanov of Bulgaria. Quote, "The Creator has planted within every creature a fragment of himself, a spark, a spirit of the same nature as himself, and thanks to this spirit, every creature can become a creator. And this means that instead of always waiting for their needs to be satisfied by some external source, human beings can work inwardly by means of their thought, their will, and their spirit to obtain the nourishing, healing elements they need. This is why the teaching I bring you is of the Spirit, of the Creator, and not of matter." Unquote. I love this quote because it speaks to a part of you that has been largely ignored throughout all of your educational pursuits and accomplishments. The key words here are a fragment of himself, a spark that lies within you, but has largely been left unexamined. This is a great image for you to begin to understand the greatness of your higher self. There is a spark of God within you that is the invisibleness I've been alluding to. It is that which you cannot grasp with the senses. It beats your heart, it grows your hair, and it keeps your lungs breathing in and out. You've become accustomed to taking it for granted while putting the major focus of your life on the physical, that is the unreal part of you. My objective in this chapter and the next is to inspire you to recognize that a spark, a tiny fragment of the creative source of the universe, is located within you, and to help you increase the power of that spark so it becomes the primary force in your everyday life. Review the first chapter and affirm your willingness to change your concept of yourself to help you recognize and increase that spark. Then dedicate yourself to exploring this higher self that I'm talking about. Your higher self is that spark, but a spark is an infinitesimal portion of your physical being. If you weigh, say, 150 pounds, that spark weighs maybe 1/100th of an ounce or 1/1,000,000th of an ounce. This is only a symbolic image because the spark is unchanging. But I'm encouraging you to conceptualize that spark of God inside of you. Imagine it growing to double its size, then a tenfold spark, then maybe a shred, then a segment, then a chunk, then a lump, then a piece, then a section. And just perceive that spark of God as the real you becoming visible through your loving and inviting attentiveness until you feel the sacred presence of your higher self as the guiding light of your life. Ultimately, as I'll talk about later, it will overtake the you that's been dominated by an ego and your sensory apparatus. That former speck of a spark will become the foundation of your life. You might conceptualize this former spark as a sacred light inside of your head that is the same size as your brain. Now you've had a big piece of God to assist you in attaining a status wherein the fulfillment of your wishes becomes a no-brainer, or perhaps you'd call it a new-brainer. This new brain is comprised exclusively of infinite God energy. In order to accomplish becoming an almighty being, your higher self, that is God, must be enlarged from a spark to a more meaningful portion of your essence. Since you are a piece of God, and therefore have that within you, you needn't doubt your own divinity. As Jesus reminds you in the New Testament, "Is it not written in your law, I have said, you are God's?" That's from the book of John 10:34. As a growing spark of God, you must be willing to say, That portion of myself that has not edged God out, that is ego, must be perfect. It is all-knowing and it is almighty. There is nothing that this higher self, that I am, cannot accomplish. Once again, let's look back at something Jesus told us. Quote, with God, all things are possible. That's in the book of Matthew 19:26. All things are possible leaves nothing out. As my teachers in the initiatic sciences frequently reminded me, this higher self, that portion of God that is us, only begins to notice us and give us the attention we crave when we enlarge it from a tiny spark and invite that energy into our life. Your awareness that God isn't something external to you, but rather a portion of yourself, is truly a giant step in your spiritual evolution. You can tell yourself with genuine knowing, I am perfect. All forms of I am have tremendous significance. God no longer resides outside of you and no longer plays favorites. In short, you've revised humankind's image of a God created in its own egoistic idea of itself. A God who knows how to heal, yet withholds healing from some and offers it to others who are presumed to have paid some kind of dues. A God who is angry. A God who gives humans the pleasure of sexuality, but promises to burn in hell those who don't follow rules devised by other humans. A God who gives us eyes and remains invisible, but threatens damnation for those who don't believe in him. A God who demands to be paid for services with fancy temples and gold-lined costumes for his highest representative. This is a God of the ego. Your higher self is a piece of an all-loving, all-embracing, creative source. All you need do is accept that this is not something external to yourself. It resides within you. The kingdom of heaven is within. In fact, it is you. And all you need do is begin to align yourself with this divine essence. Begin to act like it acts and think like it thinks. And you will begin the process of manifesting just as it does. This is the true essence of living a life in which your wishes are fulfilled, giving your divine nature a chance.
And the affirmation for this principle of manifestation is, I deserve to experience divine abundance, for I am a part of God. And of course, the universe is abundant. It is endless. This intelligence that I've been speaking about is endless and abundant. And you, therefore, also are abundant and are deserving of that abundance. But there's a lot of stuff that has come your way that has worked to convince you that this isn't true. And what I want to do here in this principle is to help you to recognize not only your own divinity, but that whatever comes your way, you are entitled to. And that there's nothing selfish about having a desire. This idea that somehow there's an incompatibility with desiring abundance in your life or desiring healing or desiring anything in your life. You know, you can't create without a desire. You can't have anything without a desire. Even the desire to be desireless is a desire. And this idea that we don't have desires is really it's a hallucination. It's a myth that somehow I shouldn't be wanting things. You are a part of the endlessness and the abundance of this divine universe. And you are not incompatible with prosperity and joy and wealth and fulfillment. This is something that you not only can ask for, but are entitled to. And you must know that. Someone mailed this to me that I thought I'd share this with you. It's called I Am Lost. It says, a woman is dying of AIDS. A priest is summoned. He attempts to comfort her, but to no avail. I am lost, she said. I have ruined my life and every life around me. Now I'm going painfully to hell. There's no hope for me. The priest saw a framed picture of a pretty girl on the dresser. Who is this, he asked. The woman brightened. She is my daughter, the one beautiful thing in my life. And would you help her if she was in trouble or made a mistake? Would you forgive her? Would you still love her? Of course I would, cried the woman. I would do anything for her. Why do you ask such a question? Because I want you to know, said the priest, that God has a picture of you on his dresser. And I think that picturing ourselves this way, with all of the problems that we have had, the things that we feel bad about, the mistakes that we may have made, the people that we may have hurt, all of these kinds of things have a tendency to make us feel unworthy. There's a lot of people who think, I'm going to be able to manifest what I want in my life as soon as I am no longer an addict, or as soon as I am no longer fat, or as soon as I remove all of these problems I have in this relationship. When I get rid of all of this, when this all goes, then I will feel worthy. And it's almost like you have to shift that consciousness around and come at it from a different perspective, which says, I love myself while I am fat. I love myself while I'm an addict. I love myself regardless of what it is that I may have seen as something that I shouldn't be. That God does have a picture of me on his dresser, is the metaphor as well. And what it does is it fills you with this kind of unconditional love that I'll be talking about a little bit later in one of the later principles. But you begin to say, yes, I am worthy. And I'll tell you when you feel most worthy of what it is that you would like to be able to manifest. You see, if you feel unworthy, what you do is you block the flow. And remember, there's an energy. There's a flowing of energy in everything. That's what manifesting is. And the idea that somehow I shouldn't have this or there's something wrong with it, that immediately puts you into a feeling or a space of being separate from this thing that you want to manifest. It's like you put up that blockage. Someone asked the question, does God have this for me? Does God want that for me? And almost always when we ask that question, we make an assumption. We're coming from that ego assumption that God and I are separate. And the same thing is true when you're feeling unworthy. What you're really saying is that God has made a mistake here. And there are no mistakes. And this divine intelligence is everywhere. And it's a theme that will run through this entire program. This idea that what I want to manifest has the same divine intelligence in it that is in me and that is in everything. So I'm realigning myself. But you can't realign yourself if you feel like what you would like to have come to you, that you aren't worthy of it. You have to know that you are as worthy of anything showing up in your life as anyone else is on the planet. The essence of this is that you have to be at peace. And being at peace is what enlightenment is. As my teacher told me, enlightenment is being immersed in and surrounded by peace. That's the definition of enlightenment. And it is also what the higher intelligence or the sacred part of you or the higher self always wants. It just wants you to be at peace. Nothing else. It's not asking any more. When you feel unworthy, you're not at peace. The ego has taken over this idea somehow that you have certain obligations, you have to behave in certain ways, you have to fulfill the obligations of your conditioning or of the tribe. That's what starts to take over. And you've got to let go of that.